Hi, Diana. Thank you so much for meeting with me today. If you could just introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about how many years you've served as ED.
Hi, I'm Diana Phillip. I'm the Executive Director for NARAL Pro-Choice Maryland. I joined the staff December 2014 and became Executive Director in 2015, and I currently am in that role.
And could you tell us a little bit about the political environment at the time that you joined to presently?
So what happened when I joined was Governor Larry Hogan had just been named governor. And as a Republican, I think it surprised the Democratic Party and the pro-choice movement in our state that he had won. And people just didn't know what to expect because he certainly did not run on any kind of position regarding abortion rights. He said that in his mind it was settled, and so he was considered more of a mixed choice candidate. So Governor Hogan came into office, and it feels like not soon after the Trump-Pence administration came in, and then we had the additions of Justices Kavanaugh and Gorsuch. Governor Hogan was reelected, and then Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away. And now we find ourselves in a situation where, although we've had the last few years of people feel emboldened, anti-choice activists, anti-abortion activists, and advocates and legislators emboldened to do as much as they can to restrict our rights because of the Trump-Pence administration, because of the Hogan administration. I think there's great hope under the Biden-Harris administration that there's much that can be achieved, but really it comes down to states, and that's where the battle really is. The anti-abortion legislation is being passed in the states, moving through the federal courts, going to a U.S. Supreme Court, which now has a supermajority of people that are not dedicated to reproductive rights. And so that's the political situation I was in, and here we are now, but also the politics of the movement. When I came into this position, medication abortion was something that more patients were requesting. And people don't really have, still trying to wrap their heads around the idea of seeking abortion care outside of a clinical setting. And also, we're in the situation of trying to normalize abortion care as healthcare. So with medication abortion, normalizing abortion care, and at the same time, there's been more of an emphasis, and rightfully so, that we start to, as a reproductive rights movement, embrace some of the tenets of reproductive justice. And that calls for us to really look at equity issues along with liberty and bodily autonomy, especially looking at social and racial injustice. And so as a traditionally white-led organization, what do we do in Maryland? What can we do better? And that was the political, that's kind of the political movement culture that I came into.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So what were some of the highlights of your tenure and some of the issue areas that you worked on?
Well, just to put this into context, we're celebrating our 40th anniversary of our 501c4, which is NARAL Pro-Choice Maryland. This is the policy and political arm of the movement in our state. So that was founded in 1981 in Silver Spring. And in 1997 is when we added the 501c3 NARAL Pro-Choice Maryland Fund, which houses our education, our outreach, our coalition building, our policy research, our professional training, and our grassroots activism. And so I feel as if the 40 years that we've been in existence, the first half has been spent in the politics of the state, doing the hard work to make sure that our elected officials are majority pro-choice and supportive of reproductive rights. We enjoy now the 2-to-1 pro-choice majority in the Senate and the House that we have today. And that was the good work that happened from about 1990 after the first attempt of legislating and making sure that we could codify Roe v. Wade that failed in 1990. And that led to the big election time for us to have those gains in the state legislature. And then in 1991 is when they passed the legislation to codify Roe, which led to the ballot referendum in 1992. And since then, I think that what happened in the first 20 years is that the executive directors were really concentrating on maintaining that pro-choice majority and anything they could possibly do politically to make sure that our rights would not be stripped, that this is pretty much the law of the land and the policy in Maryland, and that should never be questioned. And they did an amazing job doing that. This latter 20 years has been really looking at expanding what reproductive rights really means in our movement, and not just about abortion care, being in a situation of silo, that we need to look at the full spectrum of everything that childbearing individuals, people who want to form their families, the challenges and barriers, everything that should be affecting their decisions. And it could be involving so many different types of movements and all the intersections that we have with other allies and issues that intersect with reproductive freedom. So we need to take into consideration economic security. We need to take into consideration pregnancy discrimination in the workplace. We need to take into consideration different spaces in which people are being discriminated and harmed that folks hadn't considered before. And so that said to me that I needed to do, as soon as I got the job, was do a statewide tour. So in 2015, we did a tour of different communities across the state, our members, our supporters, clinics. An example are college students, and reaching out to their college campuses to find out what was important to them. And what they said were things like, we think our wellness centers are not comprehensive enough. We think that they discriminate against LGBTQ youth. We're very concerned about sexual assault Title IX claims and how it's applied to our campuses. But a common theme we kept hearing was a lack of access to emergency contraception. So that's just an example of some of the things that we learned in our listening tour. In 2015, we also started looking at the research and the statistics surrounding teen pregnancy rates and teen birth rates, and seeing if there's any kind of correlation regarding access to family planning clinics that were authentic and not anti-choice crisis pregnancy centers, looking at sex education, school-based health centers, and also the educational outcomes of these youth. Were they being fairly pushed out, or if they were dropping out and because people felt that they were truant because they meaningfully could not engage in their education the way that they wanted to once they became parents. So we started looking at some of the things that other folks don't look at, but we were fortunate because we have some really great laws in the books that are not restricting abortion care access, that we can look at these other issues. So in 2016, we started looking at and developed this study about emergency contraception in over-the-counter access in pharmacies and stores. And in 2016 is also when we started the research on looking at incarcerated and detained facilities populations about their sexual and reproductive health care and what kind of limitations, especially for timely care like pregnancy-related health care. So that led to us convening in 2017 a coalition called Reproductive Justice Inside. And also in 2017, taking that research that we did about emergency contraceptive access, we were able to publish a report about those challenges. And so that way we could see what we could do together to make the improvements for people right across our state. But we also started looking at, like our predecessors, what are the deceptive practices of anti-choice crisis pregnancy centers. 2017 was also the year that we passed the second law in the United States establishing excused absences and clarifying excused absences for pregnant and parenting students in our public schools, so that way they wouldn't be mislabeled as truant. And although we were successful with that legislation, we failed in another piece of legislation, which was trying to mandate college campuses that house students to offer emergency contraception 24/7 access. But we were the first ones in the nation to introduce that language, and a lot of other states were really excited by the work that we were trying to accomplish. 2017 was also the year that we started the Jonathan Sherberg Policy and Legal Research Program. And since then, we've had about 150 different interns come through our program, trying to launch them into the world as good leaders of reproductive rights. So 2017 was a pretty good year. In 2018, we were able to pass two great bills into law through Reproductive Justice Inside and their advocacy. One was about menstrual equity for people who are incarcerated or detained. And the second one was the first law in the United States that establishes that every facility must have in writing what the policies are regarding reproductive health care access for those who are pregnant. And anybody with a positive pregnancy test has to have a copy of that policy. They have to be informed of their rights. And surprisingly enough, I didn't realize it until we passed this law. That was the first law since 1991 that furthers abortion rights. And it took us until 2018 to actually do that. In 2018, we released our investigative report about anti-choice crisis pregnancy centers. In 2019, we began more work on pregnant and parenting students and what their rights should be for educational outcomes. And in 2019, we drafted and passed the first law in the United States banning solitary confinement of incarcerated pregnant people. And we're very, very proud of that legislation. But the big thing that we did in 2019 is we moved the organization from Silver Spring to Baltimore. And that was going to be incredibly important for the work that we wanted to do, because we really felt that we could realize a lot of our objectives and our goals as a statewide organization if we could be in the major city in Maryland. 20 colleges and universities, from undergrad through PhD. The law schools are here, the medical schools here, the pharmacy schools here, the statewide nonprofits are here, the statewide coalitions are here, the agencies are here, and it's really been terrific. And we have this beautiful space that we've been able to offer capacity for meetings, for coalitions and alliances. Our organization, we've been able to offer capacity to other groups that are volunteer-led, such as the Baltimore Abortion Fund, the Baltimore Doula Project, a Reproductive Health Equity Alliance of Maryland, the Baltimore Homeless Youth Initiative, and more. And so it's been a great honor and privilege to be part of the Baltimore community in this way. And I think it really does further all our goals towards reproductive health rights and justice. And then in 2020, the pandemic hit. And so we felt that our role was to help people understand that abortion care was essential health care, and be clear with folks about the idea that our abortion clinics were ready to serve people. Since even before the pandemic, we saw a slight to moderate increase of people traveling to Maryland for abortion care. And so we really felt during the pandemic, we need to make it clear that people could come to our state. We also were very fortunate to have boxes of donations of over-the-counter emergency contraception. So we just did this network of distributing to people across the state that had lost their health insurance because they lost their jobs or were unable or unwilling to go to a clinic, but needed that access to emergency contraception. And so 2020 was really a lot about the pandemic, and but also sparked us to really think about access to Maryland for abortion care. So we began a project we call the Maryland Abortion Access Alliance, in which we have a network of volunteers that are offering transportation, lodging, childcare, and translation services for people who are traveling to Maryland or within Maryland for abortion care, so that way it can be more of a reality. It's a project that we look forward to continuing on with Baltimore Abortion Fund, moving on the next few years. And we've also formed some volunteer groups. You can tell I'm at the office today. The Access Team Initiative, which is the idea of having local groups throughout our state and partnering with existing groups who want to further reproductive health rights and justice. And that local activism is going to be incredibly important, because we're looking at school boards and city councils and county councils and county commissions that are passing or considering passing policies and budgets that would restrict abortion rights or restrict reproductive rights in general. And we want to be able to be there on the ground, helping these local activists be able to do the work that they really want to get done. So that's kind of what we've been able to do so far. And to just go full circle, in 2021, this last legislative session, we were able to pass 3 of 5 of our bills, our priority bills. And one of them is repealing the restriction of over-the-counter medication being sold in vending machines. And so now we have the opportunity this fall, we're going to put on a symposium with college activists in trying to install vending machines in college campuses with emergency contraception, and that goes into effect October 1st. We've been very fortunate in the last several years that we've drafted 11 original bills and have passed 6 into law. So I feel very confident about our work with the Maryland General Assembly, and I think that it will continue for years. One of the things that we have been doing with the legislators that we've endorsed is backing their bills that have had the intersection with reproductive freedom. And as a result, we're able to submit written and oral testimony in over 100 bills per session for the last few years. And I think that's really important for people to understand that our legislators are in positions in order to help us with anything regarding pregnancy, anything regarding our sexual and reproductive health care rights. They're willing to step up and do it. And it may be in ways that people don't expect when we're looking at environmental rights, immigration rights, LGBTQ rights, looking at healthcare access, police reform. There's these incredible intersections that's one of our main goals this last several years, is trying to get people to understand those intersections and why they're so important. And then just to tell you, just in the future for 2022 and 2023, we're going to be looking at health education and trying to get more resources for sex education to be delivered in a way that is more attuned to the way that we want lesson plans to meet the students' needs, that we want to require that pregnant incarcerated people have assessment of high-risk pregnancies, and then set plans for them that when they are released, they can go into their communities and have a good case plan about the medical care that they deserve. We want to continue collecting the data about pregnant parenting students and their educational outcomes because we really believe that the thousands of students that are missing every year are these population of students that don't have the support that they need to finish their education for their economic security. And we're also be looking at decriminalizing pregnancy loss because we want to make sure that people are not afraid to go to medical care providers for any concern that law enforcement might be brought in if there's a substance use issue. We want to protect self-managed abortion, which is one of the newest evolutions that we have in the way that abortion care now is something that folks really want to be a part of. And then I'm very hopeful that we can do something to strengthen and clarify the right for Medicaid recipients to receive abortion care without any kind of qualifications or restrictions that we have in the state of Maryland. And that's what I've been up to during my tenure.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for walking through just some of the issue areas that you've worked on. I'd be really interested in learning what reproductive freedom means to you personally now, and if that's something that's changed during your tenure, or if you would say something that stayed constant.
I uh, I thought when I was 17 years old, when people talked about reproductive rights, they were only talking about abortion. And as a college activist, I realized it was more, but I was very fortunate in my career to be a crisis intervention specialist for victims of crime, to be a regional director for the ACLU. Um, and then I was fortunate to launch the first nonprofit in the United States for pregnant minors. So I got to learn more about youth rights and then launched a national organization to support um, independent abortion providers. I've worked in the clinic for 3 years. So yeah, it has changed because of the way my career path has gone. And I feel very fortunate that I've been able to have access to certain populations that others don't. And really keeping a good perspective about vulnerable and marginalized populations and the decisions that are made for them. So now when I think about reproductive freedom, it's not just about access to abortion care. It's if, when, and how we form our families and when we choose to parent to do so in dignity and safety and good health. And I think that is the realm of reproductive freedom. So definitely it's changed from the very beginning.
All right. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me, Diana, and really walking us through your incredible career and so many of the issue areas you've worked on. It has been a pleasure working under you as well.
Thank you, Nishka. But I would like to say one thing. I want to thank all the directors before me. So I want to thank Karen Strickler, Gloria Totten, Nancy Lyman, Tracy Siegel, Ariana Kelly, Jenny Blasdell for being a part of this video project, and then Ashley Bagwell and Joey Finkelstein, who are also executive directors, but didn't get the opportunity to be a part of all of this. So I want to thank them and the board members and the staff members, all the interns. 40 years is a really long time. When you look back, it's really amazing that the legislators, the elected officials, all our abortion providers, everybody who's been an advocate and an ally in our communities, trying to convince Marylanders that they do have a right to bodily autonomy. They do have a right to engage in decision making that's best for them. It's been, hopefully Marylanders really feel really good about what we've been able to achieve and will give us the support that we need moving forward. So I hope folks will join us this Saturday, June 26th, for our 40th anniversary party at Silver Spring at formerly the Mrs. K's Toll House, but it's back in Silver Spring in order to honor all the people that launched this organization back in 1981. And thank you for the opportunity, everybody, for me to serve you. And I look forward to what's happening in our movement. There's going to be a lot of changes coming up because our movement is always evolving. The last thing I want to say to candidates and incumbents that are running for office, yes, you do have to fill out our endorsement questionnaire because I update it every other year in order to reflect how our movement is evolving and growing. So I look forward to that political process and engaging in the 2022 election cycle of Maryland. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Diana.